Ending a long-running TV series is never easy, and many otherwise great shows have been scuppered by an uneven finale. Sometimes, however, everything comes together perfectly, leaving fans more than satisfied. Here are some TV shows that managed to stick the landing. The Americans is about a family of Soviet deep-cover agents living in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. Obviously then, things were never going to turn out well. Over the course of the series, the secret identities of Philip and Elizabeth Jennings are unknown to everyone but each other, and later their American daughter Paige. Their FBI agent neighbor Stan Beeman, however, has his suspicions, and in the series' finale start, they're finally proven true. Although the Jennings manage to flee to Russia, Stan does get a chance to confront them at gunpoint in a tense standoff, one that could easily have been the end of the road for the Jennings family.
All this time, I would have done anything for you, Philip.
Hanging over all this, of course, is the bittersweet knowledge that the Cold War is coming to an end. The title of the episode itself refers to an actual strategic arms treaty between the United States and the Soviet Union, one of the most important diplomatic moments of the late Cold War. The episode received widespread acclaim, with particular focus being given to the dramatic and nail-biting confrontation between Stan and the Jennings family. Practically every line in the scene was masterfully written and performed, making it perhaps the most memorable moment in a series packed full of them. Broad City is a sitcom about the real-life friendship between comedians Ilana Glazer and Abby Jacobson, two young women struggling to make it in New York City. The whole show is bizarre and wonderful, and the finale, named after the show itself, is one of its most special episodes. In the finale, Abby is preparing to move to Boulder, Colorado for a new job opportunity. She and Ilana trek around the city in search of one last bodega breakfast sandwich before the lunch menu goes up at 11 a.m. A whole bunch of hilarity ensues, mostly involving a perfectly functioning toilet they find on the street and a daylight robbery in the shadow of the Brooklyn Bridge. And yeah, it's all a little weird, but that's Broad City for you. Finally, Ilana and Abby throw one last party and part ways for good, but promise to stay in touch regularly over the phone. This finale simultaneously wraps up the story neatly and perfectly captures the zany, heartwarming energy that made Broad City one of the best shows of the decade. By the time you reach the end, part of you wants to just flip back to season 1 and start it all over again, which is exactly the mark of a truly great finale. The appropriately named Office episode finale pivots around Angela Martin's marriage to salesman-turned-manager Dwight Schrute. Also features a seriously meta-team Q&A panel about, well, The Office.
Do you find that your life feels pointless now that nobody's actually filming you anymore?
Yes.
In the iconic show's final moments, the main cast gathers in the office to spend a final evening together. On paper, it's overstuffed even for a double episode, but after 9 seasons, it honestly feels like it's not enough. You want every moment to drag on a little longer, because the thought of your time at Dunder Mifflin Scranton coming to an end is, well, a little bit heartbreaking. And so what if it's a little sappy? Finale is a pitch-perfect ending for an outrageous comedy that found its heart and then some along the way. In terms of highlights, everyone loves the Michael Scott appearance, but the ending is arguably the best moment of all. Perhaps that's the show's greatest accomplishment, taking a cast of potentially boring background characters and bringing them to life, while lampooning the mundanity of 9-to-5 work. Everyone is a bit of a star in the end, and everyone gets just enough of a happy ending to keep the audience happy too. Ultimately, the finale more than makes up for the show's final 2 questionable seasons and helps make The Office one of the most rewatchable series of all time. The West Wing stumbled a bit after creator and head writer Aaron Sorkin departed the show following its 4th season. However, its 7th and final season is undoubtedly one of the West Wing's strongest. The season focuses largely on President Bartlett's final months as president and the election between Democrat Matt Santos and Republican Arnie Vinnick, and even features a live presidential debate between the 2 candidates that felt bizarrely authentic. The final episode, Tomorrow, mostly deals with Santos's victory and upcoming inauguration, the aftermath of Leo McGarry's unexpected passing, and the Bartlett administration's fond memories of the past 8 years in office. Tomorrow wasn't just a nostalgia fest, though, and its most powerful moment comes during the episode's final scene.
What are you thinking about?
Tomorrow.
This vision of earnestness and optimism in politics feels like everything the West Wing had been building towards, and seems even more necessary today than it did 15 years ago. Anyone who's seen it will tell you that Fleabag should never have a 3rd season. That's not to say the show wasn't great, of course, anything but. The final episode of Season 2, however, wrapped things up so perfectly that nothing more needs to be said. In case you're unaware, Fleabag follows star and creator Phoebe Waller-Bridge through her escapades as a confused, free-spirited, and nameless woman in London. The final episode is a pitch-perfect farewell to the show. Ultimately, it ends with a breakup. Fleabag and the priest decide that despite their love for each other, their relationship just won't work out. The episode ends with a knowing wink to the show's fourth wall-breaking format. It's an achingly beautiful ending with just the right dash of ambiguity. Will Fleabag return to her old self-destructive ways, or will she grow up at last and move forward? You can't know for sure, but you can always hope for the latter. At 12 episodes, Fleabag is so short that it almost qualifies as a miniseries, but it uses every minute of screen time to devastating effect, and effortlessly leaves its bizarre, wonderful mark on TV history. The Wire is the story of a society in crisis, one in which little acts of opportunistic selfishness incentivize yet more cheating, a cycle that ultimately leads to an endless churning wheel of systemic corruption and despair. The show's final episode 30 is one of change. Mayor Carcetti leaves for the governor's mansion. Valchek replaces Daniels as commissioner. McNulty is fired for insubordination and replaced as the resident problematic cop by a disillusioned Kima Greggs. Meanwhile, Bubbles gets clean, while Dookie gets hooked. Omar is dead, and Michael Lee takes up his mantle. Marlowe walks free, but loses his empire, while Slim Charles and the New Day Co-op assume the reins of power on the streets. But these changes are deceptive. As The Wire comes to an end, the wheel continues to turn, and Baltimore's vicious cycle of crime and anger has failed to be broken. New players may have stepped up to assume control, but you don't need to see what happens to them, because you've spent the last 5 seasons learning that it hardly even matters. In the end, the garbage rolls downhill, and the neglected poor suffer the real consequences. It's a tale as old as time, but one that has rarely been so powerfully, tragically, and unforgettably told. Who said only live-action shows can have mighty endings? The iconic sci-fi series Futurama follows Philip J. Fry, a down-on-his-luck pizza delivery driver who's cryogenically frozen by mistake just before New Year's Day 2000. He wakes up a millennium later in New York, a city now dominated by flying cars, robots, mutants, and aliens. Fry finds work with the delivery crew of Planet Express, which takes him across the galaxy on a series of bizarre adventures. More than anything else, Futurama is crass, clever, and genuinely hilarious.
Bender, honey, we love you.
Yeah, baby, I know it.
Thing is, Futurama also had the ability to slip around your defenses and actually make you feel something. Fans still reference the episode's Jurassic Bark and the Luck of the Fryrish with reverence and awe, and its finale might have been the show's crowning achievement. In Meanwhile, Fry's misuse of a time-reverting button designed by Professor Farnsworth results in the world being frozen, except for himself and Leela. This allows the two to grow old, together and alone. In the end, a malfunction results in all the events of the entire show thus far being reset, as Fry and Leela agree to go around one more time. When the finale first aired, Comedy Central aired the pilot episode again immediately after, which begs the question, did Futurama even end? It's been repeatedly noted by fans and critics alike that MASH lasted far longer than the actual Korean War. Nonetheless, it still felt hard to say goodbye when the 11-season ratings behemoth finally bid adieu in 1983. The final episode, appropriately entitled Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen, depicts the final days of the Korean War through the eyes of its main cast. In the end, a ceasefire is declared and the group throws a final party. The next day, after Klinger and Soon Lee's marriage, everyone says their final goodbyes and departs for home. The episode was nominated for a whole heap of Emmys and Golden Globes, but more importantly, it had the approval of the masses too, bringing in a jaw-dropping 121.6 million viewers, beating out that year's Super Bowl. Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen remains one of the most watched broadcasts in the history of television. Many shows are remembered more for their finales than for anything else, but that's usually because things have gone very wrong indeed. Not so for 6 Feet Under, however, which follows the Fisher family and their Los Angeles funeral home in the tumultuous years after the death of the family patriarch. The show itself was acclaimed for its writing and acting throughout its run, but the finale is most fondly remembered as one of the finest in television history. The final episode, Everyone's Waiting, bucks series tradition by opening with a birth rather than a death. Brenda and the late Nate's daughter Willa is 8 weeks premature, and the doctor tells her all they can do is hope for the best. After checking in with all the surviving characters, the episode's final sequence flashes forward to the deaths of the entire main cast as Claire drives away from her family home to begin a new life in New York. It's a beautiful, chilling montage that was totally unexpected when the episode first aired. In hindsight, though, it feels like the only satisfying way to end such a macabre and groundbreaking show. It seems fitting that the show that came closest to true perfection would be the one to best stick its landing. It's also worth noting that few people really knew how Breaking Bad was going to end. That a show could keep such a passionate fan base guessing right up until the last moments is a testament to the impeccable vision of showrunner Vince Gilligan. Probably an even bigger question than how Walter White's story would end was what kind of catharsis, if any, he'd be permitted. After all, Walt was both the show's main character and its most soulless villain. In the end, though, he got exactly what he wanted, a chance to see his family one last time, a last-minute rescue for Jesse, vengeance for the death of Hank, and one last moment with his true love, a meth lab. Having been wounded in a gunfight moments earlier, Walt collapses onto the floor of the lab as the police close in, undone by his own machinations, but satisfied with how he went out. It's more or less the perfect ending, and few shows have managed to match it since. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about your favorite shows are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.